Hi friends, congratulations. You have either found a property you're ready to put an offer on or you're getting very close. And this can be an overwhelming process and there's a lot of information, but have no fear, I'm gonna break it down for you. So go get yourself a piece of paper and a pencil, put this video on pause, and then come back when you're ready to take notes. Buckle up, it is going to be a lot of information, but don't worry, we can talk about any questions you have after you watch this video. Do you have your notebook? Okay, let's get started. First, let's talk about where we are in the process real briefly, and then we'll dig into the documents that create an offer. If you've made it to this point and you're ready to put in an offer, you should have already had a lender pre-qualify you. It doesn't have to be the lender that you stick with long term, but you do need to have a pre-qualification letter in order to put in an offer for a couple of reasons. One is that listing agents are going to be looking for it. Your offer doesn't mean anything if you don't have a pre-qualification to back it up. And two is that you don't want to be putting in offers on things that do not match your financial qualifications. That is just getting yourself into a position where you might not be able to purchase the home as you have agreed to within the terms, and nobody wants that. Now that you have found the house that you want to make an offer on, we are going to have conversations about what the right offer is going to be. You are in control. I will just advise. Once we've decided what terms you want to have in your offer, then I will write up the offer. I will send it to you to sign. Once you have signed it, I will send it over to the listing agent. The listing agent will review it with the seller, and then they will respond. They have three options. Option number one is to accept your offer. Option number two is to counter offer your offer. And option number three is to decline your offer. Hopefully they will choose to accept your offer as is. They will sign it and then they will return it to us. Once your offer has been accepted, two very important timers start. Timer number one is for your earnest money. You have 2 business days to get your earnest money submitted per whatever is in the contract. And timer number 2 that starts is for your inspection. Assuming you have an inspection in your agreement, then you will need to get that scheduled quickly. Once we get past the inspection window and any other contingencies that might have been included in the offer, then it is time for the title company and the lender to get to work. They will be contacting you to schedule things and ask for things, and your job is to just do what they ask. And the last big hurdle is the appraisal. Once we pass the contingency period, the lender will order the appraisal. They'll go out and assess the market value of the property and make sure that you are not taking out a loan for more than the property's worth. So that is a very simplified version of the process. Every single transaction is unique and different because every buyer and every seller has various circumstances and different needs within a transaction. And so I will be there to assist you every step of the way, but those are kind of the big pieces of the process. Now that we've kind of talked about where you are in the process, let's talk about all of the things that you need to know when you are getting ready to put together your offer. Now at this point, remember, you have your notebook and your pencil with you. You are probably going to want to take some notes as we deep dive into the various documents. Now the offer itself is going to consist of at least 5 different documents, as well as a number of possible documents that might be added as addendums. Of the 5 documents, the first one we'll talk about is the purchase agreement. Now that one is like the mothership. That is the biggest one. The purchase agreement has the most decisions for you to make and where you outline the majority of the terms of the agreement. There's also a personal property agreement. There's seller's disclosures. There's an arbitration agreement. There's a compensation disclosure, and there is a myriad of potential addendums depending on the type of property or the scenario. Let's take a deep dive into the purchase agreement. First up, in the purchase agreement, we're going to outline what you are offering for your earnest money. Remember that earnest money is due 2 days after this agreement is signed. So this is money that you should have liquid and ready to move from your account into a escrow account, which is a special holding account. Most commonly, earnest money is about 1% of the purchase price of the home. If you want to strengthen your offer, you can increase that amount. If you do not have 1% available, then you can decrease it, but just know that decreasing it below 1% of the sale price will make your offer weaker, which if you are not competing against other offers might be okay, but just know that going in that sellers are expecting 1%. Next, you will write in what you want to offer for a purchase price, and you will say how much you are putting down as your down payment and how much you are financing and what type of financing you're getting, whether that's conventional, FHA, VA, full cash, whatever your situation is. And we'll want to make sure that your pre-qualification letter matches what we say we're going to put in the offer. Next, you'll put in your preferred closing date. It does need to be a business day, so Monday through Friday during business hours is when it will need to get scheduled. So choose a day that works for you. Typically, we're looking at between 30 to 45 days. So a day that works for you within that window. You can let me know if there is a specific date that you like. If you would like a date that's outside of that 30 to 45 day window, then we can definitely talk about the pros and cons of that and whether or not that's a good idea to shoot for something that is outside of the 30 to 45 day window. The next big section is the seller's contributions to buyer's closing costs, which is, are you asking the seller to pay it towards your closing costs? If you are getting an FHA loan, you can ask for a maximum of 6%. If you are getting a conventional loan, you can ask for a maximum of 3%. And VA loans can have a max of 4%. Your lender will be able to give you an estimate of what your closing costs will be on every particular property that you are considering. Those costs will vary depending upon the lender that you use and what your personal financial profile looks like. The next big section is inspections. Here is where you will talk about whether or not you want to have an inspection, if your purchase agreement is contingent on that inspection, and how many calendar days you want to have in order to have that inspection completed. A typical inspection window is about 5 to 7 days. You could also strengthen your offer if you shortened it to fewer days, as long as it worked out for you and for the inspector. If we're including something that is less than 5 days, then we should definitely check with an inspector and make sure that they have availability before putting that in the purchase agreement. But this is a fill in the blank. You can put however many days you want. My professional opinion is that inspections are always a good idea and that it is best to hire a professional inspector. Even though mom and dad are great, I would definitely hire a professional. That does come at a cost. Currently, an inspection is around $400, but you can have some add-ons to that, like a fireplace, a sewer line inspection, various additional things that could increase the cost. And while that does sound like a lot of money up front on a house that you are not locked into just yet, it is much more expensive to find big problems in those areas. Typically, at the end of an inspection period, we may ask for repairs or reduction in price based on the findings of that inspection. That is a renegotiation period that we need to have completed before the inspection window ends. So it is a good idea to get your inspection done a couple of days ahead of the end of your window. So if you have a 7-day inspection window, I would not wait until day 6 to get that inspection done. Schedule that as soon as possible. That way we have some time to renegotiate if needed. Inspectors typically require payment at the time of inspection, so be prepared for that, as well as prepared to meet your inspector at the property for at least the last hour of the inspection. That way you can see in person with them the things that they are putting in their report, and you can ask questions for clarification of what the concerns are and what the gravity of those concerns might entail. The next section is the sale of buyer's property, which just means whether or not you have a house that you need to sell in order to purchase this house. Then we have the real estate taxes and special assessments, which most commonly we just prorate everything from the day of closing. So you are responsible for the taxes the day of closing and beyond, and the seller is responsible for the portion of taxes leading up to the day of closing. The special assessment section usually is going to say seller shall pay all of the scenarios in which a special assessment may be assessed against the property. That could be from deferred taxes or unpaid taxes. It could also be from city initiatives like roadwork projects that were not covered under the city's budget. Then there are a couple of pages of notices and disclosures that you should make sure you read through. Then you have the section about the home warranty. A home warranty plan is totally optional. You do not need to get it for 1 year of coverage. It's about $500 to $600, and they cover a whole bunch of different things like plumbing, electrical, appliances, and all sorts of stuff. So if you want more information about that, just let me know, and I can definitely get you more info about it. But again, that is optional coverage, not required. The next section is the seller's contributions to the buyer's broker compensation or your agent's commission. At this point, we should have already filled out some representation agreements where we talked about the compensation that I receive and how I get paid. This is the part of the purchase agreement where I ask the seller to pay that. Then on the last page of the purchase agreement, we have checkboxes next to any of the addendums that we are including within the offer. And that sums up the deep dive of the purchase agreement, but we are not done. We have some other documents to talk about. Luckily, none of them are as long as the purchase agreement, so let's get right into it and start with the personal property sales agreement. Personal property is anything that is not attached to or installed to the home or attached to the property that you are purchasing. With the exception of mounted televisions, it is a general understanding that televisions will go with the owners, even if they are mounted to the wall. Everything else that is installed in the house, light fixtures, appliances, window treatments, are all considered attached to the home and are all included in the purchase of the property. Even though that's the case, I like to spell it out in this agreement, specifically making sure to name all of the appliances that should be included, especially if there is like a freezer in the basement or an extra refrigerator in the garage that you want to make sure they keep. You can also name other things that you want, such as a piece of furniture that you wanted, or a snowblower, or a lawnmower, or something of that sort. They might not agree to it, but it is an option to ask for it, and this is the form in which we would do that. The next document that will be included is the seller's disclosure. Now, in Minnesota, there are two options for the seller to fill out their disclosures. One is the regular full disclosure, where they outline all of the material defects of the home, things that they are aware of, the condition of, and answer a whole bunch of questions about the home. The second option is a seller's alternative disclosure. The alternative disclosure is very limited in the information that is provided. Full disclosures are the most advantageous because they give you the most information. Alternative disclosures are very common with people who have never lived in the home, like an investment property, maybe a fix and flip or a rental property, or when an elderly person has passed away or is no longer able to provide full disclosure. Alternative disclosures without good reason can be a red flag, so I will keep my eyes open for anything that seems out of the ordinary or fishy in that sense. But this is where your inspection is also very important. Another form that you will see is the arbitration disclosure. This one will outline for you what the process of arbitration is. And in order for arbitration to be an option, all four parties have to agree to it. That is the buyer, the seller, the buyer's agent, and the seller's agent. Myself and my brokerage typically decline arbitration because we don't think it's in the best interest of our clients. And that's mainly because arbitration cannot be appealed. Once the decision is made to settle the dispute, that's final decision. You cannot appeal that or change it. Alternatively, the option to litigate gives you more power to use the justice system to get a fair outcome and to appeal it if necessary. You will also see a compensation disclosure, which is just yet one more way to tell you how I'm getting paid and who is paying me. In that compensation disclosure, you will see a percentage, which is the commission that I get. And then you will see a flat fee, which is the buyer's broker commission, which goes to my brokerage for maintaining and keeping record of the transaction. So that sums up all of the typical documentation that you will see in an offer, but there are also some addendums that will be included depending on the type of property. If the property that you are offering on was built before 1978, you will see a lead-based paint addendum. Lead-based paint was banned in 1978, but any property that was built before 1978 could potentially have lead-based paint somewhere on the property. And so this disclosure is just giving you information about that potential hazard. However, as long as there is not peeling and chipping paint, it isn't something that you should be concerned about. If you are buying a property that is part of a homeowners association, you will see a CIC or common interest community addendum. That is outlining the 10-day statutory right to rescind your offer per review of the homeowners association documents. There is a required set of documents that you as a potential buyer of a property are required to receive from the homeowners association. Once you receive those documents, you are given 10 days to review those documents by law. The documents will include things like financials and rules and regulations and the bylaws for the homeowners association. If there is anything within those documents that is unsatisfactory, you do have the right to rescind your offer and receive your earnest money refunded. It's very important that you take the time to go through the documents in detail because no two homeowners associations are alike, which means that you need to be very familiar with the inner workings of the association in which you are looking to purchase to make sure that it fits your needs and your lifestyle. If you are purchasing a property that has a private well and or a private septic system or subsurface sewage system, then you will also see an addendum for that. In that addendum, we will typically call for an inspection for the seller to have both of those things inspected, to have the well water tested, and to have the septic system attested for compliance. There are a lot of other possible addendums that might be included, but those are kind of the big, most common ones. And with that, you have a lot of information about the basics of an offer. Now it's time for us to connect about the specifics of the offer you want to create. At this point, I will provide you with guidance and advice in my professional opinion, but it is up to you to decide what you want your offer to look like. Only you know how badly you want the house and how comfortable you are with various aspects of the contract. And so it is up to me to advise and you to decide. Now let's go get you a house.